Hi, I'm Laurie Tvedt. I'm a user experience director here in London. I specialize in designing digital products for financial services, but I have also worked in other industries as well, as you'll see as I walk you through some examples. Thanks to Libby and Duncan and the Product Circle team for inviting me to speak tonight on the power of journey maps in product design and evolution. I find journey maps to be a really useful tool and very powerful for many reasons. One, they're a great way to illustrate the human side of a process. And not just a tiny bit of the process, but a whole journey. They help you to really hone in on the challenges and the pain points. And they can also ignite the imagination of a team to create a future state vision. Everything might be working really well. You might be thinking, well, people are submitting this form, people are getting this job done, people are buying our product. But until you do some user research, talk to the users to find out whether that's really working well, whether they can do it quickly and easily, you don't really know where the stumbling blocks are. And this is a great way to kind of illustrate those stumbling blocks, share them with the team, and then use it to improve your product. So it doesn't matter if it's a consumer product that people only use every once in a while, or whether it's a business tool that they're using every day at work. You still want them to have a good experience, to complete it easily. You'll build up some brand loyalty and then want to come back and do it again. I don't know how many of you have used journey maps. Maybe you've been in a workshop where there was a journey map. Maybe you've created them yourselves, or maybe this is all completely new to you. But whatever it is, let me know in the comments if you do use journey maps and how you use them, because that will be really useful when we get to the Q&A that follows. Tonight, what I thought I'd do is I'll walk you through a case study, show you an example of how I created a map, how we used it, the outcomes. But before I do, let's start with some basics. What is a journey map? As I said, it's a bit like a process map, but it's far more expanded than that. So you're not just focusing on a tiny task that's being accomplished, but an entire journey. So not did this person fill out the form, but why did they fill out the form? Why did they even come here? What are all the various touch points we have? So they could be online, offline, in person. It's a whole experience across the full journey. Some of the things that really set it, or some of the characteristics of a journey map, it's based on a persona. That's how you get the human focus. Usually it's one person's journey across the whole thing, but sometimes it's multiple journeys. Maybe what you're trying to illustrate is how people are interacting with each other. But for this person, you need to know what are their goals and what are the actions that they're taking to meet those goals. And again, it starts from the very beginning. It's not maybe just how they're interacting with your product, but how did they hear about it? What's their motivation for coming to the business, to the shop, to the website? What are they trying to accomplish? Also, quite often it will have an emotion line. And this is really, I think, one of the most powerful things, because just looking at this map, now this happens to be a new employee onboarding experience. But even if you didn't know anything about the experience, and even though most of these boxes are probably too small for you to read, you can look across that emotion line and you can really see the peaks and the valleys and understand where are things going horribly wrong, what are the pieces that we need to improve on. Quite often you'll see within the journey when the key persona is interacting with other people, when they're using different types of technology. Sometimes the other people will get their own journey as well, and otherwise, in this case, they're interacting with so many different people during their onboarding journey. They're just indicated there who they are and what they're doing. Less common is metrics. Now, in this case, there was a survey done, so we could show some of the survey results here and how they lined up with what was going on. More common metrics might be time to complete a task or the number of times a task is done. But metrics are not always on there, but they can be. Again, it depends on what is the story you want to tell. One of the things that is almost always in a journey map is some way of showing the pain points, the challenges, the opportunities. because as we all know, a challenge becomes an opportunity. Now these are organized, basically it's organized into a grid. Other than the emotion line, you can see there's just, columns and rows, and you're going to fit everything in there. The rows going across are often called swim lanes. So they'll say, we need a swim line for the goals. We need a swim lane to show the metrics. If you hear that term swim lane, that's what it means. Sometimes I hear people calling a journey map that is focused on the technology bits a service design blueprint. Now, while there are some subtle differences between a service design blueprint and a journey map, they're really very similar, and most people use the terms interchangeably. So don't get too worried about what the differences are, unless you work somewhere where they really make a difference. Now, a journey map it's for you. It's a tool. It's a tool to help unite the team. It's a tool to help envision a new future. And it really depends on what is the story you want to tell and how detailed or how simple you want to make it. This one happens to be quite detailed. But here's an example. This one is much simpler. Now, this was never intended to be printed out large format, so we just basically made a PowerPoint template using the insert table function that, you pick your colors and it gives you the grid. You can pop the boxes into the grid. It keeps everything nicely lined up. And this was part of a larger presentation that was PowerPoint as well, so it fit in nicely. And it's pretty quick and easy to do. Or you can go all out and make beautiful full color journeys that you're going to post on the wall. These are two of my colleagues, Amy and Phil. They did a project for an auto manufacturer, and you can see them printing them out on these big plotters. The image down at the bottom is the workshop that they had, where they used some of their research findings to create the initial journeys for the workshop, and then based on the workshop findings, they printed out these really nice full color ones that just took up the entire room. And they use them in a second workshop. So as I said, I thought it would be good for me to just walk you through a case study. I did a project a few years ago for a regional bank in the States. Their branches are located mostly in smaller cities and towns. They tend to have a lot of customers that maybe the branch isn't in their town. They have to go to the next town over, or they're rural. So it's quite different than here in London, where we can just walk to our local branch on the corner. And we had worked with them before on some mortgage application process, but they wanted us to come back in and help them with a product for unsecured loans. So they knew that their customers wanted unsecured loans. They'd done a lot of market research. People were coming to the website. They were sometimes starting an application online. They were even coming into the branches, but they were not completing the loan application, and they didn't know why. They're getting a very low completion rate. So what we did was we came in and they had done research in the past, so they didn't want us to do new research. We did a series of workshops, and this is actually a pretty common process. So the first workshop was to understand the current state. In order to understand the current state, we first had to understand who their customers are. And so we spent the morning creating personas. And here we've actually got more detailed personas than this, but here we can show them all on one page. And so we looked at both new customers and existing customers that might want to get an unsecured loan. We looked at younger people like David. He's just kind of moved into his first home and he needs to buy a lot of furniture and doesn't have any money. Up to Bruce, who's, further along in his career and further along in his life and has mortgages and a lot of things, but just wants a line of credit. And in between, we have Linda and Pam. And we've focused on one of the personas to do a current state journey map. And we decided to focus on Linda because she's really the most common representative of the most common of their customer types. Linda's a mom who's a bit overextended in her credit. She's got a lot of high credit card minimum payments she has to make that are very high interest, and she wants to come to the bank, get an unsecured loan, pay off those credit cards, kind of get control of her finances and start with a clean slate, and then just worry about paying off a lower interest loan. Now, when we looked at the journey, we weren't focused so much on the mechanics of how does she fill out the loan paperwork, but from the very beginning of the process. How does she decide she needs a loan? How does she decide which product is right for her? What are all the touch points in the bank? How is she interacting online? Is she calling? Is she going into the branch? And so we wanted to really understand her current process. So we brought together a group of people. We had the product owners. We had some people that were in customer service that talk to people all the time. We had some people from branch representatives, and we brought them together in a room. And we started with our Linda persona, and then we looked at what are her goals and what are the actions that she's taking to achieve those goals. So we just put these with Post-it notes. Now I partnered with Amy on this one again, and she did such a great job on this. So what we basically did was we started with 2 swim lanes with the goals and the actions. Did that all the way across the whole process. Then we went back and we started to fill in the other swim lanes. And we used different colors of Post-it notes because as you're going through the workshop, sometimes you just, you don't want to spend the whole day moving them down. And one way to keep them really nicely organized is to use different colors. So then we looked at who else is she interacting with? How is she interacting with them? What are all the touch points? What technologies is she using? How much time is this taking? We had branch managers, we had underwriters, we had a lot of different people involved in this process. And finally, at the bottom, which you can kind of see Amy working on right now, is what are the opportunities that we see that could be coming into place here to make this a better process. So we're primarily focused on the current state, but even part of the current state is going to be challenges and opportunities. So we had, after we went through this workshop, as the design team, we took all of this away and we created for them this really nice illustration map with a beautiful emotion line on it. It's probably really hard for you to read, but up at the top, we put little icons to indicate with each step, what was she thinking? What was her goal? Was she on a phone? Was she on a computer? Was she in the branch? How was she interacting with people? Then we had different swim lanes for, again, the different actors, the branch manager, the underwriter. The only metric we used on here was how long something took. We always know that the underwriting process always takes the same amount of time. We put that in there. So this was really useful for them to quickly understand exactly what was going on with Linda. And then we do a process that we call walking the wall. So we print this out full size, takes up the entire wall. We bring the team back together for a second workshop. The second workshop is going to be to create the future state vision. But before we can create a future state vision, we have to make sure that everyone's aligned on exactly what is the current state. So again, I mentioned walking the wall. So we'll put this up. We'll go across it, and as we go through, we'll look at each step, talk about what's working, what's not working, where are we having successes, where are we having pain points, and start to spark some conversation on what are the opportunities to improve on those pain points, to improve this process, eliminate these pain points, and make it just a really easy and quick process for Linda. We also, at the same time we did that in the second workshop, we added a few new things. Sometimes there were things that we had left off. And again, the journey maps are great. You can write on them. You can put Post-it notes. You can leave it up on the wall so everyone can see it. Once we understood the current state, we started to then really focus on where are the key pain points. And here what we found, the key pain points, as evidenced by this nice dip in the map, were when she was actually interacting with the bank. As I mentioned earlier, they have a lot of customers where maybe the branch is in the next town over, maybe they're rural. They have to, drive to the bank. It may take a while to get there. Once Linda gets to the bank, she might discover that she doesn't have the right documents. Maybe she didn't bring the proper ID. Maybe the person that she needs to talk to isn't even there. Because some of these branches that are very small, one branch manager could cover multiple branches, and they only are in each one for a few days or a few hours in a day. And Linda doesn't know that. She gets to the branch, the person's not there. She has to come back. She comes back again. They tell her to bring some different paperwork. She comes back again. Then it goes through underwriting, and that's going to take 3 or 4 hours. So even if she came in the morning, she still has to leave and come back in that afternoon or come back another day when there's going to be someone that can help her with the paperwork. So it became pretty clear in this workshop process that the way that we could eliminate this big dip here and eliminate these pain points was to take all of the interactions that are happening in the branch and move them online. They didn't have the capability to do some of the simplest online things for account opening, but we wanted to eliminate anyone ever having to come into a branch. So what we did was we took the group. In the second workshop, we had a bigger group. We included some people from the technology team. We wanted to get as many good minds in the room as we could. And we divided them, We divided them into 2 groups, and we had each of them create a future state map. So one of them focused again on Linda. She's a new customer trying to clean up her credit. We had the other one focus on Pam because she is an existing customer. So while her needs may be the same, her process is going to be slightly different because she already has an account. The type of information will be slightly different. And her needs are different too, because in her persona, she was an independent contractor that had variations in her income, so she needed different amounts of money during the year. But what we did was we had the teams basically mimic the process that Amy had walked them through in the first workshop, so they knew what it was. Start with your goals, start with your actions, get those 2 swim lanes up first, and then layer as much information over that as you can. We took all this away from the workshop, and what we came back with was a kind of dual future state vision. So we put both Linda and Pam in the same map, and the reason why we did this is because we wanted to look at where was this new loan application process going to be exactly the same for both of them, and where was it slightly different because one was a new customer and one was an existing customer. We had identified a lot of ways that we could improve the process, eliminate those pain points through an online application, document upload, ID verification, credit check. Then you see there's a little bit of a gap. They still have to go through underwriting, but when underwriting is done, you don't have to go back to the branch. You just get an alert, you come back online, do the final approvals, final details, sign the paperwork. So there were a few things that we had wanted to do that, because this was a couple years ago, weren't quite readily available. One of them was the ID check. We knew that there were a lot of kind of new softwares coming out with facial recognition. And I think a lot of us, it's very common now. These things come up really quickly where you hold up your ID, it takes a photo, the webcam looks at your face, it matches to say if you're the same person. We put that on here, but knowing that it was a few years down the line, we also put a solution that they could implement right away, which in the States, they often use LexisNexis to validate an ID. So we put both options in there. But we came up with a completely online process. And what this resulted in for the bank, and that's really what this is, like, what are the outcomes? Why did we go through all this problem, bring so many people together, have us all these series of workshops, The bank ended up with a really clear vision, and everyone is aligned on that vision, and that's really important as well, because they were all in the room when we created these future state journeys. They all agreed on what were the best opportunities, which were the most important ones to follow up on. So they have a clear vision and direction. They're able to then go off and start defining these new products, defining the requirements. How are they going, or not new products, but maybe let's say they evolved the product, right? They already had the loan product, but now the way that they're delivering it is going to be different. They could start writing the requirements, the user stories. They could start their planning and their budget for the new products. And then actually they did, in the less than a year later, start designing and building an online process that they could use. Before we wrap up, I do have to say, I've just spent, like 15 minutes talking about workshops and printing out maps and putting them up on walls. And right now we're all stuck at home working from a table in the kitchen on the corner. Here's my dining table. Everyone's in a similar situation, right? How are we going to do this now virtually? Well, I had some colleagues that had been doing a huge user research project late last year and early in 2020. It was for two companies that were being merged together. And they were really focused on the back office processes of these companies and how they were going to take their global business teams and merge them together so that they could all be doing everything in the same way. They'd already gone through the user research. They'd already had some workshops. They'd already made pretty complex journey maps with emotion lines, looking at the two different companies in their current state. And when they wanted to compare them side by side, they created this map, and they were scheduled to go into a workshop. And the goal of the workshop was to kind of basically walk the wall, go through each step and look at how are they similar, how are they different, where are they doing the same things, do they have different policies and procedures. You were using two different third-party applications for getting a lot of things done. This particular project was P2P or procure to pay, so everything from creating a purchase order all the way to working with the vendors and payment and getting the vendors paid. The problem was, right before they went into this workshop, lockdown came into effect and they weren't able to do an in-person workshop. They knew that putting this up on a screen, it's really hard to read. Then you have to worry about zooming in and scrolling back and forth. And, the mechanics of it were going to be really difficult. So one of my brilliant colleagues, Amanda Junko, came up with this idea of flipping it 90 degrees, making it a vertical map, and then she added some interactivity into it. She just used Axure. So the map was built in Sketch, and then she used Axure to give it some interactivity. So while they were holding the workshop, people could put it in their iPad, scroll up and down, and she even made a lot of these things linkable so you could tap or click to drill down another level. And it actually, I think, is almost better than just having it on the wall. I'd love to see a future state for us when we are back to meeting in person. Post the big one on the wall. It's brilliant to have it there. It's great as a leave behind. Everybody can get around it and align, but also give the people the opportunity to really get close up on a mobile device and look at the detail and scroll through in their own rhythm and their own time. The one other thing about doing this virtually, and there probably a lot of you have used virtual tools. I like to use Mural. I've also used Miro. They're very similar, but I've got this basically starting point for making a journey map already set up in Mural. And one of the things that's great about this is it's really easy to set up the swim lanes, and they have these drag and drop post-it notes. People can collaborate, so multiple people can be making post-it notes at the same time and creating the journey map together just as if you were going to be in a workshop. So I think I'm out of time. I hope that was useful. Thank you for listening. I hoped I sparked some new ideas for you. And again, thanks for inviting me to speak tonight. And we've got a good Q&A. So if you do have questions on anything that I mentioned, please put them in there. Thank you.